ideas? Don't you find that new ideas develop when you can talk about them with other people? If you can't discuss them freely because there is a correct view, you soon cease to have new ideas.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. I saw this piece on Twitter, thinking it was something I hadn't seen before. It's entitled, "Are Canada's Islamists Calling the Shots? Government Petitioned to Silence Critics." It's from the Gatestone Institute. There'll be links on my site. Here's the piece. Samer Mazoub from Quebec has initiated an official Government of Canada petition to the House of Commons. The sponsor of the petition is a Liberal Member of Parliament, Frank Bayes. The petition calls upon the government to condemn all forms of Islamophobia. Samer Mazoub self-identifies as being part of a multiple Islamist extremist organisation in Quebec, including the infamous Al-Rador Mosque and the Muslim Association of Canada, MAC. MAC itself states that they follow the teachings of Hassan Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood. If there was any doubt, a senior member of MAC, Dr. El Tawani Atiyah, made it clear when he stated, "Here we follow the teachings of the Muslim Brotherhood," unquote. The Muslim Brotherhood is listed as a terrorist group in many countries in the Middle East, while a recent UK government report states the Muslim Brotherhood have a highly ambiguous relationship with violent extremism, both as an ideology and as a network. It has been a rite of passage for some individuals and groups who have gone on to engage in violence and terrorism, unquote. The Muslim Association of Canada itself has been identified in the Canadian Senate testimony as being a Muslim Brotherhood front group. Accusations of racism and Islamophobia are the sword and the shield of the extremist Islam in the West. It makes excellent use of the concept of perpetual victimhood. The motto of the Muslim Brotherhood is, "Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope," unquote. The term Islamophobia was popularized by the mullahs in Iran after 1979 revolution. Women who would not willingly wear the veil were attacked by the government and accused of being Islamophobic. Didn't know that. For not submitting to the will of the male mullahs. Richard Stone was one of the authors of a letter to The Guardian in 1994 that used the term. He was also on the Runnymede Trust, which put the term into broad circulation in 1996. Oh, know this guy. Trevor Phillips of Britain's Equalities and Human Rights Commission, EHRC, who commissioned the Runnymede report, has now admitted in a damaging new report on integration and segregation and how the followers of Islam are creating nations within nations, unquote, in the West, that he got almost everything wrong, unquote, on Muslim immigration. It is not unusual for a Liberal Member of Parliament to support efforts by extremists. Canada's Parliamentary Secretary for Global Affairs, Junior Foreign Minister, is an open supporter of Islamic Sharia law. Is that right? Several other Liberal members have close links to extremism as well. Additionally, in 2016, Prime Minister Trudeau chose not to observe any 9/11 memorial ceremony to honour Canadians who died that day. However, the very next day he attended the Ottawa Main Mosque, which has multiple links to extremism. This despite recent stories in Canada about extremism in mosques and schools in Canada. Canada's Minister of Democratic Reform, Mariam Monsef, is another Liberal Party member, creating waves around her place of birth and Islamist belief system. She campaigned on a narrative of how she, as an Afghan refugee, could do great things in Canada, until it became clear she was actually born in Iran. She was reported to have tried to return to Afghanistan to take a job there in 2014, but it seems she spent the time in Iran instead. More notably, she claims to find Sharia law, quote, fascinating. It was the founder member of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan Banna, who stated that it is the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its laws on all nations and to extend its power to the entire planet, unquote. The discourse of Islamophobia, unquote, and this petition are nothing more than a continuation of the efforts of the Islamists to silence their critics as they advance their own political agenda. Well, there you have it. Here's the problem with this, and I think it should disturb every Canadian and perhaps worry Americans as well. How easily a certain ethnic group can influence a government. The problem is, this piece is not current. It's by Tom Quiggin, October 27, 2016. Also back in 2017, in the National Post, I give you this comment from CBC journalist/commentator Rex Murphy. That link will also be on my website. Here's that piece. The basic question to ask the supporters of the contentious anti-Islamophobic motion is, has it any utility? Will it do anything? Will it change attitudes for the better? If there is a stock of genuine Islamophobia in Canada, will recording this motion decrease it or move to decrease it? That, I presume, was the priority consideration in the minds that brought it forth. Obviously, they must have thought it would. Otherwise, there would be no point in issuing it, arguing for it, and stirring quite a considerable debate. It already has. For the motion itself and the politics that attended it have not been without contention. The question raised on its wording were legitimate. Were the particulars focused on Islam? Why not a motion, as some suggested, speaking out against prejudice of all religions? There is also concern that the motion will, in some manner, chill valid criticism of Islamist terror. Or will it not make allowance for legitimate criticism or analysis of Islam? Such criticism would now be forced to wear the degrading mantle of Islamophobia, giving this welter of mixed impressions and varied understandings of the very viewpoint of the motion. How effective can it be? There is the key term itself, Islamophobia. As I have suggested in an earlier piece, this recent coinage, Islamophobia, itself a contested term. The minister piloting the motion sees Islamophobia as the irrational hatred of Muslims that led to discrimination. That's not as clear as at first glance it might seem. If the fear is irrational, then the ambition to reduce it by means of distant parliamentary motion is a curious, if not wild, response. Irrational fears are by definition those not subject to reason. We eliminate those only by therapy or medicine. We do not argue them away. Hence, we have never had a motion deploring claustrophobia. The cruel deeds by a terrorist at the British Parliament this week give sombre point to these concerns. Should we not have some moderate response of caution and concern after London? Is that irrational? There is nothing irrational in giving a reasoned or limited fear towards a group publicly committed to terrorism and self-declared perpetrators of it in the name of Islam. Nor is there bigotry, Islamophobia, in seeing the declared connection with Islam in these kinds of terror acts. If there is an Islamic connection, and it is declared, even insisted upon by the actors themselves, it is surely not phobic both to see the connection and heed the declaration. Then too there is the rhetorical or forensic deployment of the term. A person who criticizes Islam or reasonably makes a connection between the current terrorism and certain groups with Islam will, in some circles, very quickly be labelled Islamophobic. No one likes to be called a bigot, and thus people under fear of such a change mute their speech, trim their thoughts, and withhold honest criticism because of the weight of this word Islamophobe being placed on their shoulders. Plainly put, sometimes the charge of Islamophobia is merely a harsh, dishonest way of shutting down an argument or expelling all conversation. Who argues with a bigot? Yet there is an even wider reason to question the motion's value. Time and again it was stressed that this was not a law, not a piece of legislation, but a mere motion. It therefore mandated precisely nothing. It had no penalties for people who chose to ignore it. It brought into being no requirements in action. So, it must be presumed its point is merely to place on the parliamentary record the sentiment of the House of Commons on a sensitive matter. And to be blunt, what will that likely achieve? Will it perhaps launch one of Parliament's dubious and protracted studies? Will it change the social or moral landscape of our country in any detectable way? Its proponents make such a case for its innocuousness, such a point of repeating it is not legislation, and how it will not alter existing laws or behaviours. So what will it do? What is it for? We might add as well that the public have long lost the habit, if they ever enjoyed it, of looking at Parliament Hill as their moral lighthouse. I will go further. My guess is that the great swath of Canadian public, the great large centre hailed by politicians of every stripe, is not really in any need of guidance. They are not reflexively or otherwise haters of Islam, unquote, and are appalled by the very notion. In fact, the public might more readily send moral signals to Parliament than the reverse. The remaining segment, that element that we may agree are in the obnoxious camp of genuine prejudice, will be oblivious to the point of contempt at any prodding from those politicians, unquote. To change their minds or views, can a mere motion really carry any weight with the very set it is designed to address? I really don't think so. A buzz of stupid chatter is all they will hear, if they listen at all. Finally, it is interesting that by raising this matter to parliamentary attention, the motion itself provoked more of a storm than it settled. There were contentions in the House. There were the usual accusations of playing politics with a sensitive issue. There was a sharp division on why Islam was centred in the debate and not all prejudice towards all religion. Was that helpful? To return to my original question, was the debate and the division in Parliament itself likely to reduce any measurable way the Islamophobia it was designed to reduce? I cannot see it. The motion is either futile or inutile, or both. Now, if you live in Canada, as many of you do, you'll know all too well how much of this BS has actually come to pass. M103, the attack on Canadians' free speech, has passed. They call it something else, but it's still the same thing. Even though the people that really know about the law know, like you and I, it is totally unconstitutional. Somehow these laws are not only passed and put into practice, they are never challenged by constitutional professionals. It beggars belief, in my mind, why they would not challenge them. My guess is this: if they passed a law, or tried to pass a law, that Canadians had the right to bear arms, I think all hell would let loose. But I think a lot of us would fight that, because I personally think Canadians should have the right to bear arms. And that's not popular in Canada with the lefties, let me tell you. If you ever had any doubt who's really running Canada by passing blatant anti-charter legislation in Parliament, those MPs who supported this and other bills on both sides are culpable. Not just the federal Liberal Communists who never stopped chipping away at our democracy. They are not the only ones responsible. If you read in detail, as I have, the so-called hate laws passed in Canada, they attempt to tie you up in legalese, what you can and cannot say. I will put links to those documents, and I'm also going to publish the documents on my website in case they, not available suddenly. But here's my point. I believe there comes a point in time in a country's legal history where the citizens of that country find themselves beholden to laws that are written, certainly to my mind, in such a deliberate way and convoluted way for such purposes that only trained lawyers versed in English can understand the niceties and have the ability to unravel them. It is at that point we must stop. We must stop. Laws are for the common man and should be understood and agreed with by the common man. It is for that reason and that reason alone that I ask you to consider this. Lawyers can just as easily represent someone with documents written in plain English rather than legalese. The cost to everyone concerned would be greatly reduced, and more importantly, benefit us all, because by understanding laws written by supposedly us to benefit us all, there is far less likelihood of confusion or deviation, as the laws would be those that the vast majority of us would agree with. There's no reason that the law that you write should have to take 1,000 words to write it, when 20 words will suffice. And they know it. And they know it. So lawyers would bitch, yes, but they would actually process clients more quickly and benefit more clients. Isn't that what the law's supposed to be about? To meter out justice, not delay it, because only lawyers can understand it? When you have groups, individuals, bodies, etc., attempting to manipulate and write laws for a select few, that's when freedom and justice are clearly open to corruption and perversion of those laws. It's time we rewrote our laws, not necessarily just in Canada, everywhere. We write the laws in plain English so we can all understand them, so they can't hide little tricks in there. I'll give you an example. Here's the first one. All Canadians have the right to free, unfettered, free speech without restriction. There you go, that's a law. All Canadians have the right to religion. That's a law. Here's one they won't like. All Canadians have the right to bear arms without restriction. That's how you write laws in my mind. How could you misinterpret that? Very simple. Well, I suppose somebody could say, well, you're saying they could have automatic weapons. All right, well, add it on the end with the restriction of automatic weapons. There you go. It's not difficult. It's the comment that I always make. Life is simple. Lawyers make it not so. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, and email. We are also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. And you can now hear a weekend review of our podcasts on WHBJ DB, News Talk Radio. Join us and many others. And you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.